Hey guys, and welcome to another episode of the RAW Barbell Club podcast. I'm your host, coach, and all-around good guy, Andy, and today I have the voice of the people himself, Seb Ostrowicz from Weightlifting House on the podcast. Guys, I've had Seb on multiple times before, and this time is just as fire as those others. I actually got him on basically to explain to me how ROBI and the new Olympic qualification system works, but we ended up talking about a lot of other things. Seb is someone that I really enjoy talking to, just in terms of like talking to coaches and athletes and people within the sport. So we often go on, tangents here and there, but it's a really fun conversation for me, and I hope it's a really fun conversation for you. Guys, if you love this podcast like I did, please give it a 5-star rating on iTunes and leave a little review, because I read them all, and if it's really cool, I'll probably share it on here. If you really want to help us out, make sure to share this podcast, because that's how we grow. If enough people share it, then more people listen to it, basically, and every new person that listens is another potential person that could share it. So it just goes on and on and on and on and on, and that's how podcasts grow. And if you really, really want to help us out, you now can. Making this podcast is a lot of fun, but it does cost us a lot of money, time, and effort. And you can now help. So we're taking donations. All you have to do is go to www.rawbarbellclub.com/donate, and you'll be able to click the link that says donate through PayPal, and you'll be able to donate whatever amount you see fit. But all I ask for is the price of coffee. If every single person that listens to the podcast donated a coffee, we'd have enough money to keep this podcast going for another 3 months. Thank you so much to everyone who has already donated, and you guys are the best. I can't really say anything more than that. I love you all, and first off, thanks for listening, and thanks for believing in me and this podcast enough to donate your hard-earned money to it. I very, very, very much appreciate it. I'd also like to give a special mention to Gareth Crowther, who has been one of our latest patrons, I guess you can call them. Thank you so much, man. I appreciate it. And to hundreds and hundreds more podcasts. Anyway, I like this episode. I think you'll like it. It's fire. I'm ready to roll. I hope you are. Let's go.
Supersonic.
Just so that I know where it stopped and where it started. Okay. I hope that's working. I always feel I have such fears. My biggest fear in life is that the podcast won't record.
Yeah.
I don't know if you feel that way as well.
I've had that a couple times. One time I did have a guy on, and about 15 minutes in, I just realized, and I just had to stop him. I was like, man, I'm so sorry. I haven't recorded it. Can we just start again? It was a bit awkward, but I mean, other than that, it tends to be okay. Get away with it just about. Yeah.
What's sort of like the other biggest like kerfuffle you've had recording the podcast?
When I spoke to Kate and I for the first time, I was still using 2 laptops to record, so one to record me and one to record her. And for some reason, the laptop that was recording me just died halfway through. Or I say halfway through, like 10 minutes in. So she could hear me and I was recording her, but I wasn't being recorded at all. I didn't tell her. I just kept going through for like an hour and a half. And then afterwards, I had to essentially like re-record myself asking the questions and fitting them into the spaces. So if you listen to that episode again, like it's not okay. Like
it's just a little disjointed.
I don't think anyone noticed, and I spent ages editing it to make it sound right and like trying to remind myself what the questions were, but just about, I think, got away with it. I never got anyone messaging me asking, but during that, I was really panicked.
Oh,
like,
no.
I was just like, Jesus, like, this is a complete mess.
I can't believe you did that as well. Like,
Yeah.
I would have probably just, cried and given up.
I felt bad because like she was really young at the time. I was like, I don't like this is her first podcast ever, and it was still within the first like maybe 8 months of Weightlifting House podcast. So I just thought I can't afford to not have a good episode with this person, and I feel bad for her if I told her, oh, I'm not putting it up.
Did you ever tell her what happened?
No, never told her.
Oh, okay.
I've had her on since as well.
Yeah,
I should probably tell her next time. She'd probably find it really funny.
She's so strong.
Yeah, man. She's
like,
going up.
I can't believe, like, just watching her clean and jerk, like, I'm like, oh, one day she's probably going to, like, out clean and jerk me quite easily.
Yeah, I think she'll clean, like, she could clean 150 one day.
Yep, I see that.
That's seriously big. Yeah.
Who's sort of, like, the most impressive person that you're sort of looking at the moment? I guess in American weightlifting, because everyone knows the American lifters.
In American weightlifting, the most impressive.
Yeah.
To you. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised. Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if it was Kate Knight. I mean, the fact that she just snatched 115 off blocks is incredible. And then the person who, like, he gets all the hype, but even with the hype, I still don't think people appreciate just quite how good he is CJ Cummings. I mean, just the amount that he's progressing at the moment, and then the fact that he just clean and jerked 192, which was a kilo less than Shizi Yong just hit at the Asian Championships. And it's only 4 kilos under the world record, and he's 17 years old. So that to me is like, I mean, I had Stang. I don't know if you know John Stang. I had him on the podcast recently, and he was saying that he thinks if CJ was in one of these other countries and had, access to some of the pharmaceuticals that these guys had, he genuinely could be one of the best weightlifters of all time. And I actually, like, I hate throwing around things like that. I make a point of never saying anything too sensationalist, but like, that's probably not far off the truth. If he's 4 kilos under a world record, and I have no reason to assume that he's not clean because he's never failed any tests or anything, so that's the position that I have to take. Then I just think, what if he was on a bunch of gear like we know a lot of lifters have been? He would be, truly absurd.
Well, on the flip side of that, don't you think it's even scarier to consider that without that stuff, he's still probably going to be one of the best weightlifters of all time?
Yeah, that's true. That's
like,
very true.
If he's at those numbers now, like, that's pushing some massive weights. Like, what's even the 81 world record, like the heaviest 81 world record, or 77, wherever it was before, was like, 214 or something, right?
It's 214, and now it's 204. So, like, it's come down a lot.
So
I mean, he's 12 kilos off the world record of someone 8 kilos heavier. Yeah.
and let's say
if he can push his snatch up to like 160, then in a competition where someone like Shizi Yong doesn't turn up, he could become a world champion for sure.
Oh, easily.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's crazy. And then what about like people like Harrison?
I mean, he's had a bit of a setback over the last few months with he got injured, and then obviously he left Team Alpha Barbell, I think they're called, with Kevin Simons. I don't know exactly what went on with that.
That's what I was going to ask you next.
Yeah, I did speak to Phil Andrews about it over the weekend because he was at the British International Open where I was this weekend, and I had a chat with him about it, and I kind of said to him, is that something you can tell me, or is that just is hushed up? And he said, well, I can't tell you, but he gave me some rough ideas as to what it was, which again, like, I don't think I can say, but I do. Like, the one thing I probably can say about it is it wasn't weightlifting related. It wasn't that Harrison felt like he wasn't getting good enough or anything like that. But I mean, I'd love to know exactly what happened there, and I really hope that they can reconcile whatever it was and get back, because they were an amazing partnership. And like 100%. Phil said to me, he said, like, they were probably the strongest coach-athlete relationship that he knew of. Like, even more than CJ and Coach Ray and Wes and Dave Spitz. Like, Harrison and Kevin were like the best. So it's sad, but hopefully they'll work out whatever it was, and maybe we can see them doing crazy things. But I mean, regardless, Harrison's going to find success wherever he goes, I think. And there's probably hundreds of hungry coaches right now messaging him, sliding into the DM, seeing if he's going to move over and train with them. Yeah.
I'm surprised he's not on the Weightlifting House Patreon program.
Oh, Harrison?
Yeah.
Following the weightlifting, following the programming that me and Josh do. Yeah. I think if he decided to do that, I would have to drop almost everything I was doing, because the stress and the pressure of making sure that he fulfilled all of his potential would be so high. It'd be so much responsibility that you just wouldn't hear from me again.
Oh, dude.
It'd be the end of Weightlifting House and the start of something else.
I don't think people realize how much stress it is to coach a high-level athlete. Like, just regular athletes are a lot of stress and responsibility. Mm-hmm. And just hearing some of the planning that goes in when you talk to people like Dave Spitz and Travis Mash, I'm like, man, I kind of never want to have to deal with that.
No, I know what you mean. Yeah, I mean, it's a huge responsibility. And like you said, like I have it and you have it with athletes who are decent, like pretty good athletes, but when you get to that level and you realize the athlete is aware that they can be unbelievable, and they've decided that you're the person who's going to help them express that potential, turn possibility into reality, and that's on you. It's like it's not just that you have the possibility to help them be amazing, but you also have the possibility to really screw them up and not let them reach where they could because you weren't careful enough and you didn't put enough time and effort. And that's a horrible responsibility to have. But I suppose when it's going right, it's amazing as well.
Yeah, very true. And I think people don't realize how much elite athlete takes in terms of like time and effort. I think you can kind of see it if you watch like Cal Strength videos and you see how much like Chevy and Wes are featured compared to like, all of the other lifters nowadays.
Yeah. No, that's true. And it seems to be that there's so much more to it outside of just the coaching. Like it's almost becoming, to a certain extent, life coaching as well, which I don't think it used to have to be during the 80s and 90s when, at least in Europe, it was like the Soviet era and you just did what the coach said and you had to live in a certain way, you had to live in this dorm room and these were the foods that you ate. But now it's like you have to explain everything to them. Like, this is the sort of thing that's going to screw you up. You need to go to bed at this time. And even just saying it, like the athlete doesn't necessarily do it. You have to explain all the reasons why this is the right thing and get them into this mindset where, they are going to prioritize just an early night over having fun with their friends and enjoying other aspects of their life. And that's a tough thing. It's not even just hit this 80% for a triple. It's all the things that come along outside of that.
Yeah, 100%. Like I was talking to a high-level athlete in Australia from like who competed at like the 2000 Olympics and things like that. Right. And her like perspective on training and her perspective on like how you should behave with your coach and things like that, I was like blown away because I've got a pretty, liberal gym. The athletes have a certain amount of say in their programming. They have a certain amount of say in what they do, how they do it, and all that. And she was kind of just like, hey, no, like I show up. Coach tells me this is what I'm doing. I do it. Coach tells me to go home. When I hear about like athletes getting kicked out of gyms and things for like not saying hello or, walking around the gym with their, barefoot, I'm like, like that's a paying client that I'm kicking out of the gym. Maybe I shouldn't do that.
Right. No, I think you kind of need a balance. And I like the idea that the athletes have some level of freedom and they can come and talk to you and say, hey, coach, I don't feel like this is working out, or I feel like I need to start getting more work on this and this and this. And the better the athlete is, the more room to do that they should have. Like, if you walk into the door of the gym, you shouldn't have any say, really. And, like, if you say, I want to become a weightlifter, then the coach basically should just write the program because they know. But years and years, as you progress, you should have more and more say. But I think, like, a certain level of freedom in the gym and just having quite a liberal gym is really nice, so long as you can get to a point where if you as the coach put your foot down and say, no, we're doing this, as long as the athletes have respect for that and go, okay, all right, you know what, you are in charge. If this is what you say we're doing it. If there's like too much fighting back, I can see that becoming a problem at some point. But I mean, you can't run it like some kind of, prison camp type thing where like you have to do this. If you don't say hello, if you don't greet things in the right way, if you step over a bar, if you walk onto a platform with bare feet, like you're kicked out. Like I understand those rules and like there's this kind of cool idea that maybe this is the right way to do it or whatever. But I think you've got to have some freedom, especially in the Western world. Like things are kind of different here, honestly, to other parts of the world. And we always hear stories about what it was like in Bulgaria and the Soviet Union, and it's just a different time. Like people were slightly different. Like society had brought them up differently. But now with the amount of freedoms that we have in the world, there's going to be a certain level of freedom that comes in the gym, and then you've got to have a certain level of discipline as well, just to make sure that people aren't mucking about and taking advantage of it too much.
Yeah, well, for the general population that is in a weightlifting gym or a CrossFit gym where a lot of weightlifting clubs are situated, you're sort of looking at, general population, and they're
Right.
there recreationally. So you can't really treat them, like like they're in prison or like they're in the army. It has to be somewhat, democratic in your
Right.
approach. You've just got to have a little bit more nuance.
I completely agree. Yeah, I completely agree. I mean, I don't own my own gym, and like that's one of the things I think is particularly cool about what you're doing is you do the podcast and you have this gym. And I mean, I watch all of your videos on Instagram; they're pretty cool. But like the fact that you have that and you have, you've got your environment set up is awesome. And I know that one day I'll do the same. When that will be, I don't know, because I feel like I've got a lot of other stuff that I'm trying to get done first. But I think creating that correct gym environment is important. I mean, to the extent where I've had I had Dave Spitz, who owns Cal Strength. I had him on the podcast like a month ago, and he said that he will kick out really talented athletes if they don't fit in with the ethos of that gym, and if there's a little bit of contention between the new person and the other members, doesn't matter how talented they are, doesn't matter if he even thinks that they can make the Olympics. It's like they're out of the gym, and he's just said that is a really important precedent to set. I mean, it's difficult as a beginner because you think, well, I've barely got any athletes. Like this one person's amazing. I need to do whatever I can to keep them. But ultimately, years after years, that the one most important thing is just the ethos environment of the gym. And then you've just got to make sure that athletes fit to it rather than, trying to mold around each athlete completely.
Yeah. And I think it works both ways. So you can really see that in Cal Strength in particular, because we've watched all of those videos.
Right, yeah.
I know you have as well. That the culture was built early on from a mixture of the coaches and the athletes, and then every preceding generation has just fit that same culture.
Yeah,
as close to it as possible.
Yeah, and I'm excited. So I get to go to Cal Strength in a couple months.
Ooh.
And spend some time. Yeah, so Dave said to me, come out just before the World Championship, so when Wes and Chevy are basically peaking, come out, do some filming, do some interviews and that kind of thing. And he said just whilst you're here, like you've got to train, because he said there's something really special about the place. Like you turn up and it's like the walls are talking, and there's such a rich history of hard training sessions and national champions and world medalists in that gym that it just brings out the best in people. So I will get to, because I've never been in a gym quite like that. So I'm looking forward to be able to, just for my own benefit as a coach, kind of understand that's what he means when he says about gym environment, and that's what he means when he says about atmosphere and working hard and not messing about and respecting the coach, but still whilst having tons of fun. Like that's going to be a big learning experience for me, I think.
Well, I can definitely see that. I know the videos at Cal Strength are like super fun, and it looks like everyone's always joking around and stuff. But then when you hear Wes and Chevy or Rob or any of those guys talk about Dave and the coaching, they do have this level of deference, and that's amazing to see that he can, fulfill all of those roles where he's like switched on enough to be the the leader, but he's
Right.
also somewhat relaxed enough to be the friend when he needs to. I mean, that's what I see from where I am, and I've never talked to them, and I have no idea, but these are the impressions. So whatever they're doing is, marketing wise, it's got me to buy in.
Oh, 100%. Yeah. It's a difficult thing to do, and I suppose one of the things as well is the more that you live your truth of how you want these things to be, then the easier it gets, because instead of having to always control everyone, if you've just selected the right people who fit in with that ethos, then you don't always have to walk around with this whip trying to make sure that people act how you want them to act. Like the gym kind of starts to run itself to some degree, and the athletes buy into that system and that environment, and they, as a body, kind of self-select who turns up and who disappears. Like, I mean, Wes was selected by the athletes. They said, Rob said, I want Wes to come and train here. He'll fit in well. And so he came. And they've had other athletes, like, I won't name any names because I don't want to call people out, but you see people turn up who are pretty good, like 150, 190 kind of people. And then a month or two later, they're just gone. And they just didn't fit. And the athletes just decide, this isn't right. And Dave says, okay, if this isn't right for you guys, not right for me, you're out. And that's it. And it's kind of cool that they can do that. But I think that takes years of practice, probably.
It takes years of practice. And a certain level of stability within the gym too.
Absolutely.
The leadership needs to know where they stand and stand by what they know.
Right. No, completely agree.
What other gyms have you seen, or coaches have you seen that sort of have this down pat, or have their coaching down pat? Like I see Dave as, like someone who's really got their, art, on the road to perfection. They've got the business, they've got the coaching. Who else do you sort of see as like a model that you could?
Right. I mean, the one person that I've spent the most time with obviously is Glenn Pendley, and he has it to a T, where he is so relaxed as a coach now. Like, not to the extent where he does, like, he sits down, like he stands up the whole time during training and he watches every lift. Like, he's really invested in it, but he's not, like, he's suddenly got an athlete who is a 170, 200 lifter as a 102. Really, really good and really unknown. And I said to him, like, does this cause you stress knowing that you've got a guy who can legitimately snatch 400 pounds and clean and jerk 500 pounds, like 182, 227, and it's on you to make sure it goes well? And he just said, no, I've done it before. I know what it is. And he makes things seem so simple. He's like, look, he's got to progressively lift slightly heavier weights. The squat workouts and the strength workouts have got to get harder and harder and harder until he can't push it anymore. Then we'll back off. Maybe we'll increase the reps or decrease them. And we just do it over and over again. And over time, he's going to hit these numbers. And he just has that level of confidence. And I've never seen more people set PRs in a gym than when they're in a gym with Glenn. Which is, I mean, ultimately, that's what you want as a coach. And I mean, that's how you define a good coach in many ways. It's like, are people progressing? And the amount of progression with him it really has been insane. Outside of him, gosh, I'm so on the spot. There are so many good coaches. I mean, to see a coach go from being decent to really good is impressive. So someone like Travis Mash, he went from, kind of starting out coaching weightlifting again, having a few good lifters, talking about having some people who didn't fit in and they caused like a really nasty kind of side of the gym, removing them and constantly working on honing what he believed was the right way to do it. And now he's got, arguably the most successful gym in the USA for weightlifting. Like that's really awesome to see. But I mean, it tends to be, the older the coaches, the more time they've had to work out and file down into this perfect, streamlined, almost like factory, of a gym. And it's the newer guys who struggle more. That's why, like, I would probably find owning a gym right now difficult. I'm sure it'd be the same with Josh, who I co-host some of the podcasts with. You're probably finding that, every year you get better at it. I mean, I think it's a long-term progression, really.
Well, every year I get better at it and then realize how bad I am. So
yeah,
it's like I never satisfied, never happy, but always somewhat getting better. Like I get better and then realize how much I still don't know, or make mistakes that you consider really stupid in 2 weeks.
Right. But I mean, that's something to think about, because I do the same, not with the gym, but I do the same way. Like I feel like I'm getting better, but then I don't always feel happy about where I'm at. And that's actually like a mindset that needs to be worked on, because I realized just how unproductive that is. Because I would do something, I'd bring something out, or I'd write some really good stuff, or I'd do something that I would have considered in the past to be really awesome, and I'd suddenly do it, and that would very immediately become my new baseline of where I'm at, and I just wouldn't give myself the opportunity to just appreciate and think, well done, Seb, like you worked hard at that, you did it well, appreciate this moment, and then let's move on. And I'm just very quick to, and it sounds like maybe you're as well, just very quick to immediately adapt to the new impressive thing that I did. That becomes baseline. It's no longer good anymore, and it's basically success without this certain level of fulfillment. And that, I think that is something that you kind of got to have on a knife edge, where you don't want to feel too fulfilled, because then you're not going to push yourself to the next thing. But if you don't let yourself feel some level of fulfillment, you're gonna kind of eventually crash and burn, or just not be truly as happy as you ought to be. And that's, I mean, I think that's hugely prevalent these days, but I notice it with what I'm doing. And just make sure that you don't do it too, because you seem like a crazily happy guy, but even so, like, just make sure about that kind of thing, because I worry about that for myself.
Oh yeah, that makes sense. One thing that helped me out a lot with that was, you know how you would write a program, and then once the athlete is finished through the program, you might, look through it once or twice and use it as a basis for the next one. But a couple of months later, like, you've just forgotten about it.
Yeah.
So what I used to do is, like, sometimes I'd go through my files and just look at these old programs and be like, what the hell was I even thinking?
Oh yeah. But it's almost embarrassing sometimes when you look at your old programs. You're like, why did I think this would work? And the funny thing is, normally it does work, because you get so bogged down into the nitty gritty of, like, okay, I need to do this phase potentiation, and I need to have this specific special exercise to target the lower back. And it's like, when you think about it, it's just overload over time, really, in specificity. And so you look back at these programs and you think, what was I doing? But of course it worked, because it was just training.
Yeah.
But it just doesn't quite fit into the molds of the niche sort of hot topics of the day that you're kind of into.
Yep. That's it. That's it exactly. And the thing that helped me was two things. The first was getting those programs, just sprucing them up so they look nice, and then putting them out into the ether, because they're no good to me, but they could be good to someone else. So I just put them up and say, hey guys, if you want a weightlifting program and can't find one, you can, download a free one from our website.
That's a really good thing. I've actually seen that. Yeah, on your website, on your top bar, you've got your store, and you've got the podcast, and you've got the programs. I like that.
And then the second thing was just looking through those programs again, and generally I have notes on, what worked, what didn't work, and then trying to see how those would work today. And so I'll just tell you a scenario that happened recently. Is that, like, I was doing that and then realized that I've strayed so far away from reps in the clean and jerk that all of my guys can basically only do singles in the clean and jerk.
Yeah. No, I've been down that kind of rabbit hole before. I mean, what do you think about that for your, because your lifters are kind of intermediate level, like, where they've been lifting for a little while, they're pretty good, but they're not elite or anything.
Yeah.
And do you find that them needing to be able to do a bunch of reps at 70 to 80% is actually really important for them to then peak and hit 101%? Or are you more than happy for them to just do singles and build up capacity elsewhere?
Yeah, so that's how I thought about it for a long time. But what I've realized is that there's a certain mental component, like this emotion that the athletes feel when they're doing singles all the time, that every rep has to be like deep breath, set, go. Like, whereas it's like for some of my CrossFit athletes, their 1RMs are higher now than they were ever before, but their working sets are much lower than they ever were. So, I mean, to use me as an example, my snatch has improved dramatically over, the last, however many years. But where I could do, a set of 10 at 70% for some god awful reason.
Wow.
I can only do maybe like 60%. So I'm actually worse off in that respect. And it doesn't affect me because mentally I know how to prep for like multiple reps versus preps for prepping for a single lift. But for some of the athletes, it does. And they find it hard to like switch between the two.
Yeah. I mean, I can tell you right now that 70% for a set of 10 in the snatch would be an impossibility for me. There's no way I could do that. I could probably do it in the back squat maybe, but in the snatch, that's impressive.
Well, yeah. I know Glenn is very like 5s and 3s and 1s, but have you ever done sets of 10 or 8 or anything in the Olympic lifts?
In the lift? No. In all accessories, like, deadlifts, squats, push press, everything like that, yes, quite often, but the most I've done was 5s in the lifts, and that was, I mean, the interesting thing about it was it actually worked tremendously for me. Like, I really enjoyed it. Snatching sets of 5 from the floor and from the hang, and then it was clean and jerk triples, but it was also clean sets of 5. And building up that clean sets of 5, like I was hitting by the end of it 5 RMs in the clean that I would not have believed would have been possible before. And then you just start feeling fatigued, but also, I don't know if you get this, like fatigue, but so consistent and just strong, and you just know exactly how to make a clean perfectly because you've done so much practice with all of these 5s that you just feel better. And it ended up leading to a terrific peak where I actually hit my best ever snatch and clean. So it worked out well for me, and I've never considered maybe I should push that even further. I'm like, why don't I try a set of 7? But I don't know, the logical side of me says that's just not going to work. But then, I mean, you never know. Like, I've never heard of people doing it before, but I mean, I could give it a go, I suppose. But I mean, once you're beyond a set of 5, I start to think to myself, why wouldn't you do fewer reps in the set and more sets, and then that way make each rep look nicer? Because presumably that 7th, 8th, 9th, 10th rep isn't going to actually look that good. But I mean, again, like I haven't tried it, so I don't know.
Yeah, and so this is my sort of like experiment that I've been having for the last few months, is that, I actually think it is worthwhile doing those bigger sets because it teaches you, one, like to be perfect for longer. So it gives you a certain level of consistency. And then those last 2 to 3 reps, which end up being kind of like dog shit, those reps are where the money is in terms of like when things go wrong. Especially for my level of lifters, this intermediate to intermediate advanced level. Yeah. If they can learn to, like recover or fix a mistake mid-lift, that's the difference between, a white light and a red light.
Yeah. I mean, I could definitely see myself giving it a go for like a couple weeks after a competition before moving on to like the next phase, like just coming in and doing that for a bit of fun. I mean, I see some coaches giving their athletes GVT, German volume training, on the squats. They do 10 sets of 10 and stuff. I look at that and I think that looks crazy, but then in a way that almost shouldn't be possible, they almost always end up having really impressive squat sessions for the following few weeks. Like just that amount of volume, that shock to the system really resensitizes their muscles to adaptation, and it's kind of cool to see. So I might have to give that a go. I don't want to go over 10 reps because I don't want it to be called CrossFit, but I can maybe go up to 10. I can maybe give that a go.
Well, conversely, if you were training a CrossFitter, I would actually rather give them 3 sets of 10 rather than, Isabel or something. At least then they're practicing like some level of quality.
Yeah, for sure.
I would also rather them do EMOMs rather than doing Isabel. And, if they ever test Isabel, then they're going to... and for those that are listening that don't know what Isabel is, it's 30 snatches at 60 kilos or... 135 pounds for time for the man.
That's one of the only CrossFit workouts I've ever done, because it was the only one that I just thought to myself, I know I can get through this. 60 kilos is really easy, so I'll just see what I can do. And I was relatively pleased with my performance. I think I won. I was only doing it with a few other people, but like the pain afterwards was a pain I hadn't felt since my rowing days, and I did not care for it, not one bit. My glutes were burning. I couldn't find a position to lie in on the floor that would reduce the pain. Like I kept just like flopping about and trying to find different ways to not experience this agony, but I couldn't. So I haven't done that again. Not since.
Did you ever watch that video of Kendrick Farris doing Isabel?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Oh,
he
that
was
was
quite slow.
Yeah, but just like how he started off, it looked like he was going to crush it, and then it just like died.
Yeah, he seriously slowed down. The funny thing was he was on an episode of Barbell Shrugged the week before, or a few days before, and they had told him about this workout, and they said the world record was like 1:17, and Kendrick was like, yeah, I can crush that. And they're like, really? He's like, oh yeah, I can absolutely destroy that. Like, for sure, 60 kilos? Yeah, I can beat that. And then he goes and does it at the CrossFit Games. It takes him like 3 minutes or something. And then they have him on the podcast later, and they said, do you remember you said that you would break the world record? And he just denied it, just flat denied it.
Oh, really?
Yeah. I mean, maybe he just forgot, but it's quite funny. Like, he definitely said it, and then doesn't do so well, and then, slows down after that and denies everything.
Do you still listen to Barbell Shrugged at all?
Honestly, no. Not. Well, the funny thing is, I've listened to one episode in the last couple of years, and it was last week, and it was because they had Johan Blake, the Jamaican sprinter, on, who I find anything that's measured in time or weight, I find athletes who compete in those sports interesting. And like rather than something like, I mean, I can watch rugby because I used to love rugby, or basketball or whatever, but in terms of being interested in the athletes, it's the athletes who compete in something that's time or weight, something that's really objective, like lifting a barbell or how fast can you go this distance. So for him, because I think he's run the second fastest time ever, 9:69, behind Bolt. I was like, I got to learn more about this guy. So I listened to that episode and it was really good. But other than that, I don't anymore. Do you listen to Barbell Shrugged?
Not anymore
they were huge
either.
When I started out.
Well, they were one of the first podcasts I ever listened to.
Yeah, same.
And they really got me more and more into fitness. They taught me a lot, but it looks like, after the original host left, it was really hard for me to listen. And then now, did you see that Mike Bledsoe's leaving again?
Really?
Yeah, so like he's leaving now they have so many podcasts, they call it the Shrug Collective, but now he's leaving there completely, so he won't even be on there.
Wow. Yeah, I realized they'd made that change with the Shrug Collective, and I thought to myself, like, for me, as someone who doesn't listen to them anymore, I'm probably not going to buy into this new thing, but it shows that things are going really well, where they can almost have like a network of podcasts. So I thought that's awesome for them. But I had noticed that he was kind of disappearing from it and kind of becoming a little bit more of I think he just wanted to get away from the fitness side of things and a little bit more into the mind side of things and exploration of psychedelics and all that kind of stuff. And that was like his new passion.
Yeah.
And yeah, he wasn't on the episode of Johan Blake, so I kind of figured maybe he'd ducked out already. But that's crazy. I mean, to build up something so successful and then to move on is, well, it sounds weird, but it also seems to be one of the traits of highly successful people anyway. They build stuff, it becomes successful, and then the challenge is gone, and then they want to start something new. So I'm sure whatever he does next will probably work out pretty well.
I think so too.
Yeah.
Hey, you've just been in the Middle East. Why were you over there?
Well, interesting. I was in the Middle East in two different places, unrelated to each other, in the same month, and they were both my first time, or they were my first time to the Middle East. So it just so happened that that all of May was spent abroad over there. So I did a week in Abu Dhabi, in the Emirates, which is a really strange place. Like it's all modern and built up, but it still lives with this tier class system where, like, if you're an Emirate, you are basically untouchable. Then if you're an English person or American person, you can basically do anything, but you don't mess with the Emirates, or you just get screwed. And then there's the really poor people who are kind of like slaves. Like, it's a really bizarre place to be. I didn't feel completely comfortable with spending time there, to be honest. But I spent a week there because my dad used to work there as a teacher. He'd gone back to visit some friends I had been working doing all of this work for the Continental Championships in April, and he messaged me and said, Seb, you're exhausted. You've been working too hard. I've booked you a flight. You're coming out for 5 days. So I was like, well, that's amazing. I don't have any money to go on holiday. So yeah, I'll take that. So I went, had a good time and everything. And then a week later, so my girlfriend, she's doing a PhD on Israel, Palestine, basically. And so has been spending quite a lot of time out there. And she'd been out there all of April, and I hadn't seen her in 4 or 5 weeks. So I went out and spent 3.5 weeks in Jerusalem, which is quite the experience. And then just got back a couple of days ago. So yeah, a whole month in the Middle East was great for the weather. It's probably nothing that you're not used to over there in Sydney, but even so, I mean, I came back, and the first thing, I arrived at Luton Airport, stepped outside, and bearing in mind it was like the 8th of June, and it was just pouring with rain, and I just thought, this is what I've come back for. Like, at least I can get a good cup of tea, but goddamn, the weather's bad. Yeah. Have you been to the Middle East before?
No, I've never have.
Man, it's a strange place. Like, it's really cool. I honestly really enjoyed it. I do enjoy different cultures. I'm not one of those guys who just only wants to remain in the kind of not echo chamber, but the same routine all the time. I do like visiting these places, but had never been to the Middle East. I've been to Africa. I'd been to the USA. I'd been all around Europe, but Middle East was something else. Just the traditions that they have. I mean, it's so much more of a religious place than anywhere I'd ever been to. So to see everything being kind of dictated by these religious thoughts was really interesting, and I kind of respected it in a strange way. Like, I wouldn't want to live like that, but the fact that people in Jerusalem, there's tons of Jewish people in Jerusalem, tons of Muslims in Jerusalem, and the fact that they were all living such disciplined lives, I kind of respected it. Like I said, I wouldn't do it myself, but it did make me appreciate that if you tried to enforce that somewhere like here, like, people just don't have the patience for it. Like, people just want stuff to happen all the time. Like, they want to be able to go on their phones on a Friday, and over there it's like, you can't, and you just don't, and no one complains, and they spend time with their family on a Friday instead. Like, it was just, I don't know, it's a different way of life. I quite like seeing that kind of thing, that side to the world.
And it kind of goes to show, like, when you look at, athletes and athletic culture or sport culture in these countries, where that sort of thing comes from.
Yeah. I mean, that's why you can't always replicate one country's training regime, because there's so much more that goes into it. It's the lifestyle that is so different from everything else, and the different level of stresses that they have because of that lifestyle that allow that training program to succeed. We just don't. Yeah, we don't have that kind of level of starvation of success to some extent in countries like ours, because things come quite easily. So it takes a different type of athlete and almost like a different type of motivation to make you want to win.
And coming back after a trip like that, do you feel like you're recharged, ready to go harder? Or I guess you were kind of working while you were over there as well, though, right?
Yeah, I mean, it was a full work. Yeah, it wasn't. When I was in Abu Dhabi, I didn't work a huge amount, but when I was in Israel, because Charlotte had to work the whole time, and honestly, I can't stand taking time off. Like, I don't think I've had a single day off in other than Christmas, like, in the last few years. Like, I really like to work, and it's not one of those cool, like, hustling all the time. Like, I just enjoy what I do, so I don't like to take time off. So when I was there, I just spent the whole time in different coffee shops doing work, and I just walk around Jerusalem, go to a new place, go to the old city, see some cool things, and find somewhere to sit down and just crack out my laptop and work. So it wasn't like a full break, but even so, yeah, I've come back feeling pretty amped up to try and further the reach and the in-depth material of Weightlifting House, I guess. Yeah. And then on top of that, I went to the British International Open at the weekend, which was like a big competition. I saw some big athletes, and that made me again I felt fired up to come back and do whatever I can to make sure I can go to more of those.
Oh yeah, you had a stall and stuff, right?
Yeah, that was cool. We weren't supposed to use the term sponsor, but we were supposed to use the term partner, which I thought sounds even better. To be a partner with British Weightlifting sounds cooler than a sponsor. Yeah. So yeah, we were a partner of British Weightlifting, and we had a stall, and did loads of video, sold some cool stuff. I did some plate changing, like plate loading for one of the sessions that had a bunch of Chinese international lifters in. So in some of the All Things Gym videos, you can see me at the back of the platform.
Just waving?
No, I'm not. I'm just sat there watching this lifting, and the comments on the videos are like, lol, look at the guy at the back. He's completely blown away by what's going on, or the guy at the back looks completely stoned, just zoned out. And I was like, and honestly, I was just in a trance looking at these lifters lift. But yeah, I mean, it was a cool experience to go to this. Yeah, it was awesome. And to meet Ilya and those guys, like,
oh, that was so cool. Seeing that photo.
That's big. Yeah, man, that was big. That's a top moment in my life, to be honest.
I can imagine. So do you have any plans to, partner up with any of the other federations? Maybe the Australian Weightlifting Federation, if they're listening?
I mean, honestly, I would love to. And it's something that I'm certainly wanting to do at some point. I just have to establish it fully with British weightlifting first. So I think really I need to become an official long-term partner of British weightlifting, learn kind of what goes into that, because it's so much more difficult than just messaging and saying this is what we want to do. Like, you've got to get contracts drawn up and special deals and offers for British weightlifting members, and make sure that you can turn up to all these competitions and stuff. Once I have a bit of a blueprint on how to do it, then, I mean, Australia, New Zealand, and the USA, for sure, I want to be able to run it out into and try and, I mean, there's a certain level of me just wanting to do it because I quite like the feeling of success, but then also because I just think that ultimately Weightlifting House can bring quite a lot of value to people. So the more I can kind of partner up with these big organizations, the more I can hopefully spread what it is that me and the other guys are doing over time. But yeah, I mean, dude, Australia, 100%. I want to get out there and try and work something out with you guys.
For a business looking to align themselves with a federation or some faction of a federation, looking at aligning yourself with the masters is usually a good way to go about it, because they generally have laxer rules regarding sponsorships and partnerships than the parent body, but at the same time they also have all the money, where like youth lifters and actual senior lifters tend to be quite poor and
skint,
tight with their wallets.
Yeah, it's very true. No, I've had a few people mention that to me, actually, and something I really ought to look into. And also, they're probably more likely to be the gym owners.
That too.
I mean, not always, but often. So, yeah, you're probably right. That's probably a decent tactical move, is to get involved with masters weightlifting. But now that I've said it on the podcast, I feel like if I do it, people are going to think I'm only doing it because I want to get the wallets of all of the wealthy masters lifters out there. But I mean, that is true. I mean, I coach a few masters lifters, and I get a lot of masters guys messaging me about stuff that I've spoken about on the podcast, and I massively respect what they do. I mean, I went through all the world records for the masters stuff recently on the podcast just to see if I could. If looking at them, I thought to myself, if there's any chance I might be able to hit one of these one day. And you look at them and you realize, like, these guys are just insane. Like, they're freaks. And they're all from the USA, the UK, and Australia, basically. It's like all of the other countries of athletes, once they finish being a senior, they just quit from the sport because that's their career over. And it's all like the wacky, nerdy weightlifters from the UK and Australia and the USA who just want to keep going, and they end up getting, the 40 age group or the 50 age group or 60, they get all the records for those. So it's amazing what they do.
Well, consider being like where you are now, but having like a higher level of life experience plus a higher level of disposable income. You're able to travel, you're able to compete, you're able to train. You've sort of finished having kids and they've sort of grown up. So like the world is so much more open to them at this stage. And I went to that, they had they have like a masters international competition that's not actually like AWF ratified. So obviously they have Masters World Champs, which is this year's in Montreal, but they had one last year that was in China, and it was off the chain. Yeah, I went to it.
Oh wow!
And it was amazing. Like that was where I met all those Rajeevan barbell guys,
That's
and
cool.
became friends with them. Unfortunately, Lu Jiajun wasn't there, so I didn't get to become friends with him.
Yeah, that's the dream.
Um,
Yeah, he's like the only other guy that I think would maybe not equal meeting Ilya, but he's like right there for me.
I would like to meet Lasha as well.
Oh yeah, Palash would almost be too terrifying to meet.
I just want
Like,
Lasha to take a picture of him like holding my head with one hand.
With his hand just wrapped over your head.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then you should go up onto tiptoes to make it look like he's pulling you off the ground.
Yeah, so you've got it down.
Sure
that's exactly what I want.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not sure I have the balls to go up to Lasha, and in the same way that I did with Ilya and Chumak and those guys. He's just, I mean, there's something about him being the strongest weightlifter of all time that is terrifying. You know what I mean? Like he has succeeded in lifting more weight than anyone ever, at least in the snatch and the total, not the clean and jerk yet, but that'll be to come at some point. But I mean, and the fact that he's also like, I don't think I've ever spoken to someone who weighs 170 kilos, so that in itself is ominous. But
I was looking through all those the world records and stuff the other day, and I was like looking at the body weights. I was like, 176 kilos. That doesn't look right. And then, surely enough, it is absolutely right. And I was like, holy crap. Like, these guys they're monsters of human beings.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I mean, so Mart Syme was at the competition at the weekend, and he and I had spoken before we're Facebook friends, so I knew him a little bit. And he wasn't competing because he was a little bit injured, but I said to him, I was like, Mart, you're looking big. And he was like, no, I'm I've lost a lot of weight because of my injury. And I said, how much are you? And he's like, I'm 150. And I was just like, Mark, that is not, you cannot even claim that is small. You're the largest person in this building right now, like by some margin. But he said that normally he weighs around, high 160s. And he's only about 6'1", maybe. He was like my height, just enormous. And he also injured himself benching.
Oh,
and I just thought
really?
to myself, there is no weightlifter in the world that needs to bench less than you. Like, if I ranked all the weightlifters in order of how much you need to bench, like, there are a few guys where you think, you know what, you're kind of skinny. Just do some bench, it might help. Just put some size on. But with him, it's like, you need to stay away from the bench press right now. Like, you already look like you can bench press 400 kilos. So no more, Mark. You need to just work on your pull right now.
Did you ask him how much his best bench is?
No, but I have seen him bench 200 for like reps.
Damn.
Yeah, he's pretty strong. And I mean, there are videos of him doing strict press. I think a set of 6 with 150 in the training hall, like with a little bit of a bounce off the shoulders. But even so, I mean, that's filthy.
Oh yeah, if you can strict press what regular people have to like 1 RM bench press, like with a lot of training, that is ridiculous. Like when I hear about stories of like what Glenn strict press and push press and things, I'm like
180 strict press.
Holy crap.
I know. Oh no. And that makes no sense to me. I mean, I would love to know if he did it with the old sort of, back when the press used to be part of the Olympics, they'd have the snatch, the clean and jerk, and the press, the clean and press. I'd love to know if he did it with a bit of that little sort of hips back, hips forward technique. But even so, I mean, if there's no unlocking of the knees, just blows my mind. I mean, you know what it's like to unrack that for a squat. I know what it's like to unrack that for a squat. That is not budging off my shoulders. Like at the very most, I can do that cool thing where you stand up out of a back squat and then you throw it over your head. You know what I mean? And you throw it over in front of you. Like I can do that. I've done that with 200 kilos. I didn't squat it because I couldn't squat 200 kilos. But I just unracked it and I just threw it over my head onto the ground and just to know that I could do it. But for actually pressing it just with your shoulders and your triceps is, I mean, people think they know what being strong is, but in reality they have no idea what the true strength of some of those guys actually is. It's just mind-boggling.
Yeah, and then you look at like people that do just like strongman stuff where they're like, clean and pressing, logs and things like that, and everyone says like, oh, that's ridiculous, it's amazing, and then you see, the weightlifters do quite similar things with, obviously something that's designed to be perfectly lifted off the ground and over your head, but I don't know, that always impresses me even more.
Yeah. I mean, did you see Larry Wheels hit I think it was 203 in the log press?
Yeah, that's kind of where I was going with that, because that's what
Yeah.
I've been looking at lately. That guy
I
is
mean, is
a
he one of the
monster.
most jacked people you've ever seen? Yeah, he just makes no sense. Like, he's aesthetic and unbelievably strong, which you
Yeah,
don't often get together. I mean, I feel like he could be one of the strongest people in the world. I mean, he is, I guess, technically, but I think he's coming to London at some point soon for one of those giants strongman competition. So I
because
think
he's
there's a
only
good chance
just
he's actually going to get
started
into it.
doing strongman as well, right? And he's already like
Yeah,
killing
yeah.
it.
He's pulling like 900, I think.
Oh wow.
Which I mean, if you're like one of the top guys, you're just over 1,000. So I mean, he's right there, and he's nowhere near the weight of those guys. So if he decides to not be 6% body fat and actually gain some more weight, then he could maybe reach the levels of some of those, the Half Thors and the Brian Shaws of the world.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, Zadrinas lost a whole bunch of weight, but then yeah, he was also very
Yeah,
like not as strong.
yeah. Do you know if he's coming back? Is he planning on trying to be one of the best powerlift strongmen, or is he kind of done with it at this point?
I have no idea. I think he was here in Australia like a few months back doing seminars and stuff. So I don't really see him doing a whole bunch more things that are exciting. I think we're just sort of waiting for the next generation to come up now.
Yeah. So it looks like I just pulled up his Instagram. It looks like he just won the team strongman event with someone, which is kind of cool.
Wait, this is
But
Larry
no,
or
I mean,
Zadrinas?
this is Adrenus, yeah.
Oh, okay.
It's
Does he
funny
look
because like
big
the
again?
one no, he's still lean. Like the one part of him that stayed the same size was his arms. So
And,
now he just has these like boulder biceps.
and his jaw. His
But
jaw stayed like massive as well.
he's got that growth jaw, yeah.
Yeah.
That HGH jaw. Yeah. I mean, I think there's a good shout that he is the strongest human to have ever lived. I think you could quite easily make that claim.
Big Z.
Yeah. Like, I don't know enough about strongman to rate him with other strongmen necessarily, but I mean, Glenn said that to me. Glenn said he reckons that Zadrunas is probably the strongest man of all time.
Yeah, I could see that.
And yeah, I mean, it's just kind of the difference, isn't it, between having slow strength and fast strength. Like, you look at someone like Lasher, and I said this to a friend literally a couple of days ago. I said, how well do you reckon Lash would do in the strongman competition? Because he's enormous. He's got the size. He's not maybe as heavy as there are a couple of guys who are weighing around 200, at least for the Arnold, where it's slightly heavier lifting. But would he be able to lift these heavy things slowly and in a weird way? Like, it's not all uniform when you're lifting in strongman, like lifting with a stone, a rounded back and everything. But I think if anyone in weightlifting would be good in strongman, it would be Lasher or someone like Ali Husseini, who's just freakishly strong. I hate to just take us off on a crazy tangent. I was speaking to a guy who used to be on the Iranian national team at the same time that Rezazadeh was on the team, and he said that when Ali Husseini was young in training, he did 220, 270.
Wow.
Which, yeah, blew my mind. And the thing is, I can completely believe that. Like, seeing him lift, he looks like the physically strongest weightlifter in the world, just not as good as Lasher.
Holy crap, that's ridiculous.
Yeah, and he was a teenager.
I think you're right. But it depends on what the transition time is like and what their training has looked like going into that. It seems like Mart Sim would be really good at strongman because I think he just likes being strong.
Right.
And I don't know if you know many like weightlifters or how you train, but if I'm doing a bunch of squats that are heavy, bunch of deadlifts, and I'm doing a lot of different things rather than just snatch, clean, and jerk, I tend to be well-rounded, and my snatch, clean, and jerk doesn't suffer that much. Whereas if I just do snatch, clean, and jerk, not only like I might get marginally better at it for me, but I tend to lose my athleticism. I'm not able to do all like... Actually, you know who would be really good at strongman? Ehab.
You think?
Only because he'd compete as a under 81 in the strongman and he'd kill
Yeah,
everyone. That guy is so athletic. I think he could
Yeah.
be good at any sport.
But how important do you think athleticism is compared to just strength? Because he's not the strongest 81 in the world. But
No.
yeah, I mean, he's freakishly athletic. And I suppose he's got long arms, which for something like strongman can actually be quite useful with all the pulling that they do.
Yeah, I think being athletic is really important for strongmen in particular because it's all about bracing in awkward positions.
Yeah, that's true.
Whereas weightlifting, you can be not that athletic and just be strong as an ox and get away to a certain level. Oh, actually, no, I disagree.
Yeah.
I think you have to be athletic as well. Maybe powerlifting, you can just be strong.
Yeah. I think powerlifting you have to be strong. I think weightlifting you definitely have to be athletic.
Yeah.
But strongman is probably right in between, to be honest, I'd have thought.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean,
can see
there are
that.
a few weightlifters who I look at and I think you would be awful in strongman. Like you are such a specific athlete. Like all you know is snatch, clean, and jerk. Like looking at someone like Daniel Gadelli, the Albanian, who isn't going to go to Worlds or the Olympics because he mucked up his qualifying at these events. But someone like him, you look at them and you're like, you're an amazing weightlifter, but my God, would you be awful in a strongman competition? And then yeah, someone like Klokov, you're like, well, you might actually be quite good because you're physically very strong as well as, like Klokov versus Ilya. It's like Ilya's going to outlift him in weightlifting, but Klokov's going to win in powerlifting and strongman for sure.
Actually, it wouldn't surprise me if Ilya was decent at strongman stuff because he does from looking at the interviews that he's given. Like, did you see that interview that he did that was on like Strength Insider and stuff?
Yeah.
And like
That's sad.
even like listening to that stuff in the past, like it seems like he enjoys being quite athletic.
Yeah.
And I know he's said that he's done like muscle ups and things like that while he's in the off season in the past. I don't know how much of that is like true or just exaggeration, but
I've seen a video of him doing a muscle up, and he used to do. I don't know if he still does, but he used to do breakdancing, and he was pretty decent. Like he could move well.
I have seen
He's
him
got a lot
dance.
of hip mobility. Yeah. So I think he's probably freakishly athletic. I just think his upper body strength is probably as good as it looks. It's probably masked by the fact that he has such an impressive leg drive.
Yeah.
That say he could push press 200, it's like, but I bet his strict press is significantly lower than most people who can push press 200. It's just that he has unbelievably strong legs. I mean, he front squatted 290. I don't know of any other 105s really who can do that. There are a couple maybe, but someone like Klokov will be nowhere near that. But then again, Klokov can strict press 170 or 180 or something. So it's just the different, like the ratio of where his strength lies for Ilya is all in his lower body. And for strongman, that's hugely important, but you've got to have some upper body strength.
Yeah.
I mean, this is like the most hypothetical conversation, but it's also, this is what I love talking about, is just making up random things. Just trying to decide who would be good in one sport over another. Like I used to do this with my friends where we'd just be like, who would win in a fight, Klokov or Ilya?
Who do you think would win in a fight between Klokov and Ilya?
Well, it depends what the fight was. If it was boxing, it's going to be Klokov because he's got the reach. But you get them grappling. I don't know. I could see Ilya just having that kind of crazy core and grip and sort of like farmer strength. And you just grapple him and you just have the jiu-jitsu down.
But Klokov has those crazy bow legs. He'd be able to get into, close guard so easily.
He'd just wrap you up.
Yeah.
He does have seriously bowed legs. Yeah, it's almost like he's got a lateral flexion at the knee that he can use as well as just normal flexion extension.
Yeah, it's ridiculous.
Multi joints.
It's like he's been riding horses his whole life.
It really is. It's the same with Liu Xiaojun, actually. Like just crazily bowed legs, but it also kind of looks athletic for some weird reason to me. Maybe just because I associate them with being good athletes, but I see it and I'm like, yeah, that's the mark of a guy who knows how to move.
Yeah, so I actually also agree because I don't know if you've ever watched Rich Froning move, but he kind of also walks like that, whereas,
Yeah.
toes are very forward, but his knees sort of go out a little bit.
Yeah.
And,
I know a few guys like that, and they often seem to make good field athletes. Like the rugby team at the university that I used to go to and I used to work at, they would all kind of be similar where I mean, I think it's also just a bit of a body type, but their feet would always be pointed forwards, and then their tibialis would come out kind of more laterally, so their knee would always be outside of their foot. And then you see people walking around, they've got this horrible Q angle, and their knee tracks medially when they walk, and their toes point out. And you look at them, and you're like, you are so unathletic.
Yes. Well, I think that's it.
Yeah.
I think it like our coach's mind, like our coach's subconscious mind takes over, and we say, hey, that guy looks stable. He'd probably be good at everything.
It's true. If they look stable and then they've got big ankles and big wrists, you're like, yeah, you could be a strong guy if you really tried to.
It's like when you see someone with just their hands over their head, and you can sort of tell instantly.
Oh yeah.
Like, that guy can probably move. When I get someone new in, I sort of like to just see how they move in simple tasks, like, filling up the drink bottle, putting it in the fridge, and picking stuff up off the ground. And if they move in a certain way, you can sort of deep down understand, like, like this guy's gonna move well.
Yeah. Yeah, if they're moving and there's some kind of restriction, so they're doing something else, it's so telling. Like, even like you said, if you like put this in the bottom section of the fridge, like if they just squat down or they bend their knees or they're okay kind of getting into this position, like, you just know, okay, we're gonna have a good time training. And if they kind of hand on their lower back and they just flex at the hip and their legs stay straight, it's like, well, all right, you might have some good hamstring mobility, but this isn't going to work out so well.
Yeah, you're either trying to do it for the gram, like sort of slut drop, or you're actually trying.
Yeah, because that hip flexion does seem to get a lot of likes, but in the gym I like to see a good bit of knee flexion too. Just make sure you can squat full depth with no pain. Yeah.
Hey, the reason I wanted to get you onto the podcast was actually to explain something to me.
Yes.
So, do you mind talking about that?
Yeah. So, presumably, we're talking about ROBI points.
Yes.
And just qualification for the Olympics.
Yes, exactly that. So, I've been like I did a really cool video that I haven't put up yet. It'll be up before this podcast, about Sinclair, how it works, why we use it, and now that we have the ROBI system, and it seems to be a very good system, and I think you've even explained on your podcast that you're very happy with, or not very happy, like you don't have any athletes that are doing, but like you it's very easy for you to follow, and you think it's a very good logical step in the right direction.
Yeah, I think it is actually good. And the thing is, they had to get rid of Sinclair essentially because now that there's no body weight rule, like you can't, you used to be able to equal the same total, and if you were lighter, you'd win. But because they don't have that, Sinclair no longer is reflected in the rules of weightlifting. So they had to kind of come up with something else.
Except for best lifter.
Yes, that's very true. That's very true. So, I mean, the new qualification system seems really complicated, and to some degree, it is far more complicated than it used to be. But once you have a basic understanding of it, which is not too difficult to grasp, and hopefully I'll be able to explain it all for everyone listening, it becomes really exciting, particularly for the fans, because it forces athletes to compete with a greater degree of frequency. Like, we're going to have to see all of these lifters a bunch of times rather than turning up one time to qualify. So the first thing to understand, I'll go through kind of ROBI and then how you qualify. The first thing to understand with ROBI is that you get given a certain number of points based on how well you compete. And if you equal the world record, you get a world record total, then you get 1,000 ROBI points. So that's like, if Surab Maradi goes in and does whatever his world records are now, I can't remember the new weight classes. But if you go in and you hit that, then you get 1,000 ROBI points. But interestingly, the curve of ROBI points isn't linear. So if you get 50% of the world record, you only get 100 points. So it's like this exponential curve. So essentially, every kilo that you get, every additional kilo gives you increased numbers of ROBI points. So like a kilo might give you only 5 ROBI points earlier on, but if you are between 98 and then you move to 99% of the world record, it might give you 50 ROBI points. So like every additional kilo gives you an increasing number of ROBI points. So that's kind of how that's done. In terms of the qualification for the Olympics, It's now in a situation where it's individual qualification, not team qualification, as it used to be. So every single athlete kind of competes for themselves rather than for their nation. It used to be that then the nation would decide, they'd basically select who was going to go, and they could do that off, who they preferred, who they thought would have a better chance, who had a better Sinclair, all that kind of thing. But now it's just down to the individual, which a lot of athletes like because they don't have to rely on anyone else, totaling or getting medals or anything like that. So the Olympic qualification time period is split up into 3 6-month periods. And every athlete has to compete 6 times across this 18 months. So across these 3 6-month periods, at least once in each period. So, you could have, the last 6-month period that we've just had, which was from November 2018, it was from the World Championships until the end of April this year. We've just had that 6-month period. People went to the World Championships and then people went to the European Championships, and they got 2 competitions done, which means that they only have to do another 4. One of the things to remember as well, or to understand with this, is they're only going to take into consideration 4 of your performances for how you qualify for the Olympics, which is why you've had people turning up and simply weighing in. Because if you weigh in, it means that, well, you've technically competed, but you haven't had to, peak or anything like that. So that's why Ilya early on, he just turned up and weighed in, and it happened with a few lifters. They turn up, weigh in, and then leave.
And then that means you're also, there's another ability for another time that you can get tested as well at an international meet.
Yeah, exactly, yeah. So, I mean, that's why really they have to come and compete 6 times, is that so we can make sure that people aren't, at the very least, they're not juiced to the gills. To some extent, the IOC or the IWF can control drug consumption just through the frequency of competition and testing.
You can still microdose, you just can't take those big doses.
Yeah, presumably that's what's happening. Right. So there's an 18-month period made up of 3 6-month periods. You've got to compete at least 6 times, 1 in each period, and 2 of them can technically just be weigh-ins. So, I mean, we could take someone like Ilya because he's a decent example. So he only competed once in the first qualifying period, which is from November to April. He went to the Asian Championships. He also weighed in twice during that period, which means that he's technically competed 3 times now. So he's only got to compete 3 more times, and he has 2 6-month qualification periods left. So he did last weekend, which is his second actual total, and that was the only one that he technically needs to do in this qualification period. But he'll also go to the World Championships because it's a gold tier event, and we'll get into what that gold tier means. So he did last weekend, he'll do again at World Championships in September, and then he'll have another 6 months where he'll only need to get 1 more total in. And presumably that will be at the Asian Championships again, because that's also a gold tier event. So the way that these kind of gold and silver bronze tier events is that you get a certain number of ROBI points, and then if you are at, say you equal the world record, you get 1,000 ROBI points. If you're at a major competition like a continental championship, so Europeans or Asians, or you're at the World Championships, you get a 10% ROBI point bonus. So your 1,000 ROBI points would now become 1,100 ROBI points. If you were at a silver tier event, I think something like the Commonwealth Games would count as that. Then you get a 5% ROBI point bonus. So you'd go from 1,000 to 1,050. And then if you're at a bronze tier event, which, for example, the International Open that I was at this weekend there's no bonus. So if you get 1,000 ROBI points, you get 1,000 ROBI points, which means that athletes want to compete at things like the World Championships rather than the Fajir Cup or the EGAT Cup. They want to go to the Continental Champs and the World Champs because they get these 10% ROBI bonuses, which is one of the reasons why we've seen guys like Lasher. He walked away at the European Championships with like 1,300 ROBI points because he exceeded his own world records massively. So he was at like 1,200 or something, and then he got a 10% ROBI bonus, so he was at 1,320 or something like that. So that's kind of why countries have to turn up, or lifters have to turn up, and we're going to see them compete at least they're going to weigh in 6 times and compete at least 4 times during this whole period. It's also like it's fun because if athletes, like someone like Daniel Gadelli, he didn't get in a total at all during the first qualifying period. So he went to the European Championships, and it was like he has to now make sure that he gets a good total, because if he doesn't, that means that he hasn't gotten a total during the 6-month qualification period, and so it's basically impossible for him to go to the Olympics. So you'd expect, okay, so he's going to open low, make sure he gets in a lift, and then he's going to want to jump big to take advantage of the 10% ROBI bonus, and so things get kind of exciting like that. I mean, as it turned out, he just bombed out because Albanians opened ridiculously high, and that's what he did, and he bombed, so he's not going to the Olympics. But it does make it exciting, because if people bomb, it's not as simple as, okay, I'll do another competition, because that might be the only chance they have in that 6-month period to get a total in. So the way that they then decide who goes to the Olympics is they take the best ROBI points from each athlete from each 6-month period plus the next best ROBI points. So they'll take, the best performance that, let's just take CJ, the best performance that CJ did in the first period, the second period, and the third period. And then CJ will have competed another 3 times. 2 of them could be a weigh-in, but likely it was CJ who'll actually compete. So then they'll choose the next highest ROBI points of those 3 and use that as their 4th. So they basically end up taking the top 4 performances of the athlete. And then the IWF will create a ranking list where only one lifter per country, per class can go. So if you're the number 2 ranked weightlifter in a weight class in your country, even if you're the second rated in the whole world, you can't go to the Olympics. So if you take the 81 kilo class, you've got Liu Xiaojun and Li Dayin. If, say, Liu Xiaojun is ranked number 2 in the world in that weight class, but Li Dayin is number 1, Liu Xiaojun can't go. It's impossible for him to go, which is kind of crazy, but that's just how it's working. I mean, it's good to some extent, because it means that, there have been in the past, you have a bunch of lifters from the same country all in the same weight class. It just means that doesn't happen anymore. So the IWF will select the top 8 ROBI points of each weight class and offer them a chance to go to the Olympics. Like, they'll say to them, you can go to the Olympics if you want to. And then they'll take the highest ranked athlete from each of the 5 continents and give them a position to go as well. So it might be that you don't get into, like, let's take Wes Kitts. He might not get into the top 8 in the world, but if once those 8 have been chosen, if he is the highest ranked 109 in Pan America, then he'll get a position to go as well.
Even if there's already a 109 from America?
Yeah, even if there's another 109 from the continent, yeah, then he'll go.
Okay.
So there's basically 3 ways in which you can be selected. You're either the top 8 in the world, or you're the top ranked in a continent, or you're the second ranked in a continent where the person who's the first ranked is in the top 8.
Yeah.
See what I mean? Like, say Wes Kitts is in the top 8, so he goes, then the person who was the next highest in that continent will technically be the highest in the continent, because they've already removed the 8 who are going to the Olympics, and so that person will go.
So Li Dayin and Liu could potentially go then, both?
No, and the only reason not is because they're in the same country. So the only way it doesn't work is if you're in the same. So you could be the second highest ranked in the world, but if you're in the same country as someone, you can't go. But if Liu Xiaojun was from, India, then he could go.
Okay.
It's a strange thing, but it does make it quite exciting, because countries, unless you've had a bunch of violations, which we can talk about, but countries are going to be given 4 men and 4 women. Like, you can take as many as 4 men and 4 women to the Olympics. So with someone like China, I mean, they might say, you know what, we're not convinced that Li Dayin or Liu Xiaojun can win, because we think that Ehab might win, but we're pretty sure we're guaranteed a win in this other weight class. They might just say, okay, guys, you're not going, which suddenly means that 2 new people will move into the top 8. And then there'll be another couple people who are the top in their continent, and then they'll be given a go. So it turns out that you could be like ranked number 16th or 20th in the world, and just by the way things play out, you move up. And it's going to become really exciting for the fans to watch and think, okay, these guys have been picked, but I don't know if he can win this weight class. So maybe China's not going to take him, or maybe Iran's not going to take him. They're going to take this guy instead, which means that Ehab's going to now suddenly get I mean, he'll always have a spot, but some other person's going to have a spot. So it becomes quite exciting in that sense.
Yeah, that's ridiculous.
That's basically ROBI point and qualification. It's you get a bunch of ROBI points based on how well you do. You have to compete 6 times, once in each period, and then 2 other times. And then they pick the top 8 plus the best from each continent. And if you understand that, that's basically it.
And
I mean, that's
what
how
is
it
what is the maximum amount of ROBI points someone is able to get?
I guess ultimately anything, you could get any number, but it's just whether you're capable of. I mean, no one's capable of it. So no one's going to get 2,000 ROBI points, but technically you could if you snatch 250 and clean and jerk 350.
It's just how much
like
over
that.
the world record you.
It's just how much over the world record, and in each additional kilo will give you more ROBI points than the last kilo gave you.
Yeah.
So there's this nice exponential curve that the better you are, the better you are in relation to everyone else. And you get a bunch of people who, there's a bit of a spread in terms of their totals, but they're all clumped quite closely together around the 400 to 600 ROBI mark. And then the top 5 guys, who also might actually be quite close in terms of total, are spread out over 300 ROBIs because each additional kilo is a bigger and bigger deal.
Yeah.
And so you're rewarded for it. So the most anyone's received once was Lasher with his 13-something. 1,300 something, and then I think it was someone like, I think Shizi Yong was around 1,300. I think some of the Chinese women were around there. I think Deng Wei was about 1,300 or 1,250 or something. And even CJ was over 1,000 actually, which is quite crazy. And the reason for that was the world records changed during each 6-month period. But what they do to not punish you for competing later in that 6-month period is that they set the world records at the start of that 6-month period, and it doesn't change. I mean, technically it changes, but if you compete later on, you'll still get the same number of ROBI points as you did earlier on, even if the world record had changed halfway through that 6-month period.
I see. So if someone,
see what I mean?
For example, snatched and clean and jerked 1 kilo more than Lasher, they would still get the ROBI points off 1,000 as opposed to off the 1,370.
Yeah. So I mean, someone like Sarab Muradi is going to continually set world records. So if you compete later on in a 6-month qualifying period, it's going to be harder for you to get higher ROBI because he's already set the new standards. So to get 1,000 ROBI points is now harder in that weight class because the world records are even higher.
Yeah.
So they'll say, no, the world record was a 410 kilo total or whatever it is at the start of this month's period. So until we get to the next 6-month period, that's what it's going to remain as. Even if Sarab continues to set new world records, we're just going to cap it at that. And then when we get to the next 6 months, it's going to have moved up to 420 because that's what he's now hit.
And then
you go from there.
After the 6-month period, does that mean the slate is cleaned again and everyone's back? Sorry, everyone goes back to reaching the 1,000 as the world record?
Yeah. So then 1,000. I mean, 1,000 is so. At any point during that 6 months, if you equal what was the world record at the start of that 6 months, you get 1,000 points.
Yeah.
And yeah, it will then it all resets at the start of each 6-month period.
Yep. Okay. Because
it's kind of crazy.
What I thought happened was that it always stayed at 1,000, and then you're like, if you set the world record, you're at 1,000, and then everyone else is just under you. But I didn't realize that it'll actually keep moving upwards.
Yeah, you can surpass the world record. Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's funny, so if you take, just because I know the world records in this class, if you take Shizi Yong in the 73s, I think he's done 68, 96, 168, 196, but not together, but somewhere around that. So if he when he first started, the world records were lower at the World Championships in 2018. So he only needed 160, 190 to get 1,000 ROBI points. And later on in that 6-month period, he ended up getting way more and still hitting, he snatched 168, clean jerked, whatever. It was even more. And so he ended up getting 1,300 ROBI points. But if someone had equaled what he got, or if someone had equaled what the world records were at the start of that 6-month period, if they did that at the end of the 6-month period, they would still get 1,000 ROBI points, because those world records will stick for the entire 6-month period. And then 5 days later, when we enter the next period, then suddenly to get 1,000 ROBI points, you have to equal what Shi Ziyong was hitting at the end of the previous 6-month period.
Yeah. Yeah, and the only reason you get more is if you're at a gold or silver tier event.
Right. Yeah. That's basically it. And then the only other last thing is you have to compete. Of those 6 competitions, you have to compete at least twice in the class that you want to compete in for the Olympics, which is why now that we're getting closer to the Olympics, we're going to see fewer people competing in, say, the 89 kilo class and the 102 kilo class.
And the 45 kilo class.
Yeah, exactly. The 45 kilo class for the women is that people are now kind of filing into the weight classes they want to be for the Olympics. And if say Ilya wants to go as a 96, if he continue just keeps competing as a 102, he can't go to the Olympics. So you have to make the cut or add the weight into the weight class you want to be in for at least 2 of those 6 competitions.
Yeah.
And that's basically it.
And that's kind of the cool thing that you're seeing. You will see in the United States with all those girls that are around that 71 weight class, right?
Right, yeah. I mean, and that's why it's so exciting, really, is because only one of them can go, because only one lifter from each country. So that's why there's this big hype about, will it be Matty Rogers or Kate Nye or Meredith or Jenny Arthur or whatever, who's going to take the spot? And it's because, well, they could potentially all qualify in terms of their ranking, but only one of them is going to go. Then the other 3 will disappear, and then that means that other lifters from that continent might suddenly be able to go, even if they were ranked lower than some of those American girls.
Do you think you will see lifters, particularly in Western countries, expatriate to other countries? For example, like Australia has, a slightly lower level, and we are getting, for a long time we have had lifters that have been from overseas, but do you think more so we'll have it now?
I'm trying to think if that would be beneficial. I mean, I think one of the reasons why it wouldn't be beneficial is because your governing body is going to test athletes better than other countries' governing bodies would.
Well, I mean, what about like the States? Like a United States lifter coming here would still potentially be heavier than... would be able to qualify over a homegrown athlete.
That could happen. That would make sense, because then they could still have a shot at being in the top 8 in their weight class by ROBI points. And if they didn't make that, then they're more likely to be the number 1 ranked in the continent. So that could happen. Yeah, I could see that happening. I mean, it would take a really, really... I mean, everyone's committed, but like a crazily committed person to do that. And there's a lot of emotional baggage that goes along with it, because the country that you're leaving will not like the fact that you're doing that. And then the country that you're going to, the athletes might not like that you've just suddenly come over and done that. So, but it could happen. Yeah, I mean, that could happen.
You hear that, athletes? If you want to place, Australia is the smallest continent in the world.
I hear there's a good gym over there too.
What's it called?
RAW Barbell Club. That's the one. And then another thing that kind of adds to all of this is countries who've had 20 plus doping violations have been reduced to 1 man and 1 woman rather than 4 men and 4 women. And countries with 10 to 19 have been reduced to 2 and 2. So countries that only have 1 are Kazakhstan, Azerbaijan, Russia, Belarus, and Armenia. And presumably, like, you look at some of those countries, and you think, well, they might have a bunch of athletes in the top 8, but suddenly, they're not going to be able to go because they can literally only pick 1 man and 1 woman across all weight classes. So that's going to move even more lifters from lower down in the rankings up into Olympic contention positions. So that like once this all finishes, this qualification period in April 2020, at the end of April 2020, so 11 months from now, it's going to be really exciting few months when countries are going to be taking people and then dropping someone else and seeing what other country does and then bringing someone back in. And it's going to kind of be like the combine for the NFL. If you ever watch that, it's going to be a lot of gaming the system, working out who's going to take who. is it worth us bringing this lifter even if they're ranked high? Because what if this country brings this person? And I think for the fans, it's more exciting. For the athletes, it's tough because they have to be at a high level of competition more frequently. But if you just like watching lifters, you're guaranteed to see each lifter at least 4 times in the 18 months prior to the Olympics.
Yeah, so for as a spectator, you're going to be a lot more invested in a lifter that lifts, at least 3 to 4 times, as opposed to just lifting once.
Right.
I'm
exactly.
we're big fans of the sport, so we will take any opportunity we have to watch a lifter lift. But a casual
exactly.
To grow the sport of weightlifting, you kind of need recognizable names to the general populace.
Oh yeah.
So
for sure. That's what grew. That's why, and it's weird talking about the USA all the time, but that's why they're doing so well in terms of sponsorship deals and their fame. It's like there's a face to the numbers with those guys. Like you can go to any other country and find someone who's just as good, but you kind of don't care about them and you don't invest in them emotionally because you don't know who they are, you don't know what struggles they've been through, you don't know what lifts they hit the day before. And it's getting to know the athletes makes a big difference. So the more we have these guys turning up to competition, that's only going to help grow the sport for sure.
Cool. Well, dude, thanks so much for explaining that to me.
No problem. I hope I explained it reasonably. It's complicated, but it's also, if you want to know everything about it, it's complicated. But if you just want to have a general understanding of like why are these guys competing now and what the hell's a ROBI, then hopefully that's not too difficult to get. We've got a really good sort of like Tokyo 2020 qualifying guide on weightliftinghouse.com. It's literally called Tokyo 2020 qualifying guide. So if you want to understand it more, just go into that, and it's a lot more in depth and kind of explains everything about how this all works. But the gist of it, you just got to compete more often, and you got to hope to be either in the top 8 or the next highest placement in your continent, and then you're going to go.
Speaking about your website and stuff, every time I turn around and look at your Instagram, your Facebook, your website, and all of that, it just pumps me up to do more. I'm so good. Impressed, and
thanks, man.
I love looking at all your stuff. Your website is banging now, man.
Yeah, it's good. It's growing. It's slowly kind of taking shape into what I'm hoping that Weightlifting House will become. I kind of made that slogan early on, Weightlifting House, the home of weightlifters, and then really want to just make sure that it lives up to that. So ultimately, to have a website that is the hub of all news and all media with weightlifting, that's the overall. Well, it's not the overall goal, but it's certainly one of the many goals of Weightlifting House. So that's kind of been the project of the last few months. And now we're moving on to a couple of other things, but there's still a lot of work to be done with it all. But yeah, I to be honest, man, I kind of feel the same with you. Like we were talking about, I don't know if we were recording when we spoke about this, but we were talking about doing video and that kind of thing. Like I see you doing that, and I think to myself, gosh, I'm dropping the ball on this. Like, why aren't I doing more video content? Why aren't I filming the podcasts or going to other gyms and filming content? And I've got plans to do it. I'm going to, like I said, I'm going to Cal Strength for a bit and some other gyms, and I'm going to be at Worlds hopefully. So I'll get some good content there. But you kind of can't do everything. But
yes,
you can try. You can definitely try.
I think you're coming pretty close though. Hey, and you know what? I didn't say this to you before, but the Weightlifting House thumb tape stuff is so clever.
Yeah. Thank you.
I know. You said before that you're not, a huge business guy. You just kind of do what feels right. But in terms of business strategy, that is top notch because it's, giving the, this podcast, for example, runs mainly on just myself and some people donating, and that's how we live.
Right.
But, creating value in such a simple way is just so clever. And I was like, I should have thought of that. That's amazing.
But you kind of did. That's the funny thing. You kind of did figure it out with some tape. it just never quite came into to full fruition, I guess.
Yeah, that's true. So we do have a RAW Barbell Club thumb tape. It's not as good as Seb's thumb tape, but
it's probably pretty good. I mean, I've never used it, but I'm sure it's decent. But,
well, you know what? I'll do a comparison video. I'll grab some of yours and
awesome.
then we'll go from there. But you said yours is
Yeah.
You said yours does have an adhesive on it.
Yeah.
Yeah. See,
Yeah,
ours
so
doesn't
we-
have an adhesive,
Ah.
so it just
Yeah,
sort of
no, we,
grips to itself.
Yeah, I mean, there were basically three things that I decided, like, if I was going to do thumb tape and really try and make it the most used thumb tape for weightlifters, which it's not at the moment, but it's only been out for a month, so but hopefully it will be at some point. But the things that I thought were, well, one, it has to be really sticky. Like, I had a couple people complain saying that it was so sticky that these were girls that it would occasionally pull off some nail varnish. But I was kind of like, well, that sounds good to me. Like, that means that, to my mind, that's sticky enough now. So we made sure that in the manufacturing process, we had like an additional layer of adhesive put onto what was already on it. And then the other two things. One, it has to tear really easily, because like, I don't know if you've had this, but with a bunch of the tape that I've had that I've bought from, pharmacies or rock climbing places, like, you literally have to bite into it and you get other people to get scissors out, and it's just a hassle. Whereas this just wraps around, then you just literally pull it and it tears off really easily. And then the last part is just for it to be flexible enough so that when you put it on, you're not restricted in movement. You can just bend your thumb, hook grip easily, and kind of carry on as normal. So I managed to tick all those three boxes. And so I felt happy enough to start bringing it out to people. And yeah, we're 4 weeks and 2 days down, and trying to expand, man. That's I think it's a good way to try and help fund Weightlifting House a little bit more.
Yeah, it's great. I mean, at the moment, I guess, other than that, it's just been the t-shirts, barbells, and your Patreon account, right? Oh, and the book.
Yeah.
Which is
Yeah,
awesome.
yeah.
If you haven't got the book yet, and you love weightlifting, like, you don't really love weightlifting unless you have this book.
Yeah. I mean, it was a lot of fun, that book. And the greatest weightlifters of all time, for people who don't know, it just counts down the 70 top male weightlifters ever. I'm currently writing the volume 2, which is the top female weightlifters of all time. So that's it's a lot of work, but that's going to be fun to get out, and it will be rewarding to finally have volume 1 and volume 2 side by side on my bookshelf.
Are you going to do a Sinclair countdown for that as well?
Yes, I am. But this time, just because the process was so difficult, I'm going to make sure that I have basically all of the stats ready and kind of written before I start doing the podcast. Whereas before, I did the podcast and I didn't know it was going to turn into a book. So then when it was all done, had to go back through everything and re-fact check everything, because once it's in book form, like, it has to be correct.
Yeah.
So just a few little things like that. But yeah, that'll come out. And then, yeah, T-shirts and hoodies and hats. And I mean, that's the thing. Like, barbells is a great idea, and I love doing the bars, but they are, unless you have an enormous company behind you with, promotional team and all of these sorts of people who work for you, like, selling bars is not easy to do. And then I just suddenly thought to myself, well, thumb tape, every weightlifter uses thumb tape. And when you buy it once, if it's good, you buy it again. And it just suddenly dawned on me, I was like, why the heck am I not selling a thumb tape? So that's why this has come about. And that's honestly the best way to support Weightlifting House, is just to,
it's renewable,
thumb
right?
tape.
It's like not a subscription, but like, it can be like a subscription. You're only selling one barbell.
We actually have it. Yeah, we have it set up as a subscription model.
Oh,
so,
okay, cool.
You can buy it just, one pack, or we even, because for guys like you over in Australia, we realize that buying one pack of thumb tape every month, whatever, is going to be costly on shipping. So we started doing deals. So, like, the more boxes you get, then the cheaper everything becomes. So we're at a point now where people in Australia and New Zealand are just buying boxes of 6, and then that's 18 rolls, and that's you sorted for, between 6 months and a year, basically.
Yeah.
And then you only have to pay this one-time shipping cost. So I kind of thought, like, everyone who listens to podcasts who's over on the other side of the world, that's probably the only way. But for everyone else, yeah, you can get a subscription model as well, and it's once a month, it turns up. And yeah, man.
Do you know who in Australia is buying thumb tape from you? Would I know them?
You might do. Oh gosh, I can have a quick I can probably have a quick look and
I'd just be curious.
find out. Let's check, because I'm relatively organized with my folders on my email. So if I go into my tape folder and type in Australia, I might be able to tell you. Okay, so the first one would be, who is this? Troy Hewkins
Oh, I know him.
from Bendigo Weightlifting Club.
Yep.
It's making me type in Australia every time. We have, this is from Queensland, Stephen Graham.
No, unfortunately, I don't know who that is.
No. We've got quite a few, actually. Andrew First.
No.
No. I'll give one more go.
Okay.
Aaron Davidson.
Aaron Davidson?
Yeah.
What Ollie Tech?
From Melbourne.
Okay. Maybe I do.
Maybe.
Not sure.
But yeah, I mean, we've got a few people from Australia buying, which is kind of cool, but trying to find a way to make it better for them in terms of delivery cost, because it's free delivery around the UK and the USA, but if we did that for Australia, we would just lose money. So trying to work a way to do it in bulk cheaply for everyone over there.
Yeah, you almost have
Everyone
to
down
have like somewhat of a distribution center or something here.
Yeah, exactly. Which we've actually kind of spoken about in brief before, but that's probably something that I'm going to have to get in contact with you again about at some point, because if there's a big enough group of people out there who fancy buying the tape, then I'm going to need someone that I know.
Yeah.
And I know you. You're like the only Australian that I really know. So, yeah.
Well, dude, when are you gonna come to Australia? I guess it'd be cool to have you
man.
down here.
Yeah, I mean, I so want to go. So one of the things that I'm really trying to make a push for is to be at most major competitions. So whenever you guys have some level of, whether it's a continental championship or, any competition really that counts as an Olympic qualifier, that will hopefully be good enough reason or sufficient reason for me to make the trip over.
Yeah.
So I don't know when that's going to be, but presumably there'll be one before the Olympics. So
Yeah.
I'd love to make it over. I
think
mean, I'd absolutely love to.
they should be one like early next year. I think they were trying to get. Was it Arafura Games an Olympic qualifier?
Yes, it was. Yeah, I was too late on that.
Yeah.
But there's the Oceania Championships in April. I'm just looking at it now. And there's here we are. Australian Open International in February.
Oh, that's counted as a.
There's a good chance I'll be there. Yeah, it's a bronze tier, so there's no ROBI point bonus. But yeah, I mean, I definitely would love to be there.
Well, that's an awesome comp. You could actually do that competition as well. It's got a pretty low
Really?
qualifying total.
I could maybe even see if I can qualify for the Olympics, which obviously is not possible. But no, I mean, yeah, I might even look into that. I mean, if the total is low enough for someone like me, then maybe I'll be able to sneak in. If not, I'll just be there filming and chatting with everyone and trying to push Weightlifting House out there a little bit more.
Yeah. What weight
my
class
plan,
are you
man.
in again?
Right now 96, but probably should be 102.
Yeah. Okay. So the qualifying standard for the 96s is like, I think like 248 or something like that.
Okay, that's all right. Yeah, I might see you guys there. I might be on the platform. That'll be fun.
Well, so like
Okay.
that's a big competition for Australians because it's sort of like your first taste at a national competition. It's like the
Yeah,
American
yeah.
Open is for the US.
Yeah. But
So-
it'd be awesome because, the fact that it's now international means that, I mean, in the same way that our British Championships just became an international comp, it meant that we had all of these foreign lifters there, which was great to see. So there's a good chance that you'll have that too, especially because it's in the final qualifying period. So it's like it's a last chance for certain people if they end up bombing or they want to just have something in the bag in case they bomb out at the Continental Champs in April.
Yeah.
They might just come to that competition to make sure that everything's okay. So that's awesome.
Yeah,
Yeah,
no,
that's
it's
pretty
very
cool.
cool.
Maybe that will be my first time there. I'd absolutely love to come to Australia.
Does it
I mean, it's
say
also
where
like the
it's
most
going to
dangerous
be
place, but let's have a look.
in Australia?
I mean, Oh, it doesn't even have a hyperlink on it.
Yeah, so they haven't
yet,
decided. So that might even be in
hopefully
Sydney.
Sydney or yeah.
Sydney or
you'd
Queensland
think it's got to
would
be
good.
somewhere like that. Yeah, exactly.
Well,
It's got to be somewhere big.
Arafura was in Darwin, which is like a
Huh.
very strange place to have. Oh well, no, I think Arafura Games has always been in Darwin, but like
Okay.
it's a weird place for a lot of people to travel to because it's quite expensive.
Yeah. Right.
Like it's actually cheaper to get overseas in some cases than it is for Sydney siders and Queenslanders to get to Darwin.
Really?
Yeah, it's really weird how that works.
Huh. Just because of the flights, or?
Yeah, because of the flights. I just think it's like supply demand.
Oh, damn. No, fair enough. Yeah. But no, I mean, I want to come out. It's just, it's so far.
Yeah, I get that.
And it's like, the flights are so much, but presumably, I mean, and with all of these things, and you kind of see it with other guys like Hook Grip, like Nat from Hook Grip and Gregor from All Things Gym. It's as their brands and their companies have grown, they've been able to reach more places just because they have more funds to be able to, send them out over to these different countries. So, if you start seeing me in more places, that's a good sign for Weightlifting House. And if I'm nowhere, then that's a bad sign. So you can kind of judge my success based on that at the moment, I think.
Yeah. So guys, what he's saying is we need you to buy more tape if you want to see him around.
In the most indirect way. Yeah, in the most classically British way. That's what I'm saying. Yeah.
Hey,
man. It's all going well. It's all going well.
Do you have to go?
I'm okay. I actually have 2 or 3 other podcasts to do today, which is crazy. I somehow managed to get away with not doing one for 6 days, which is now built up and meant I've got a crazily busy day. So yeah, at some point soon I probably will. I know that also with you, it's like, dude, is it like 10 p.m. or 11 p.m. with you right now?
Yeah, it's 10 p.m.
Okay. Well, if you need to get going as well, feel free. But I'm not in an immediate rush, but I can't be here for a crazy amount of time.
That's all right. I'll just another 15 minutes or so, and then I'll go.
Yeah, absolutely.
I actually have to be up at 6 a.m. to take the morning training session, and then I've got a flight to Queensland because we've got Masters Nationals on this weekend.
Oh, nice. And you've got a few lifters there?
Yeah, I've actually got my mum lifting in her first national meet.
Nice, man.
So she's.
I saw you post something about that on Instagram about your mum lifting.
Yeah, so she's like 40. I probably shouldn't tell people her age. Who cares? I think she's like 48 or something. And
awesome.
Yeah, she only just started the sport like a few months back.
Wow.
Came to the gym to sort of get fitter, and then like put a barbell in her hand, and she's like, she actually lifts a lot like me, which is, I know you listeners at home can say whether that's a good or bad thing, but
I think that's a good thing. I think you move pretty well.
But
so what is that like though, coaching a mum? That's got to be strange.
Yeah, it's really weird because I have the patience for a lot of my athletes, and I seem not to have the patience for my mum. So she gets the worst side of me as a coach ever. No. Like in terms of like, hey, why did you even do that? And the yelling side. And I know all of the athletes around are always like, hey, you treat your mum pretty bad at the gym. And I'm like,
you need to chill out on your mum.
I do.
You got no chill when it comes to your mum.
It's because I expect so much from her. And I expect her to be able to read my mind like she has for the last, however many years she's known me.
Yeah. Because she's in your domain now. Like, you were in her house, so she knew when you were hungry. But now that she's in your gym, like she can't read your mind.
No, not at all.
This is just a world that you are so heavily invested in. It's amazing how deep your knowledge of a certain thing can become. And when other people turn up, it's like they can't really have an engaging conversation with you because you're so deep into it and they're so surface level.
Yeah, 100%. And it's so weird. And yeah, coaching your parents or your partner, like I coached my partner for many years as well. It's always going to be weird, and you're always going to have like, problems and challenges and obstacles that you wouldn't have to face if you weren't that close.
Right.
In particular when you're coaching your partner and, they're meant to be a 48 and they're currently like sitting at 50, and then
Yeah.
you're at a pizza restaurant, you're like, hey,
Yeah.
I'm gonna eat this, but maybe you shouldn't.
Yeah. It's a weird thing. I mean, so Charlotte and we've been together now for over 5 years, but I still, I've made a point of basically saying, like, I'm never going to coach you. I don't really have any interest in you doing weightlifting. And she fortunately doesn't have any interest in doing it. But, like, we kind of know, like, if we got into a position where I was coaching her, it'd be awkward. Because, like, when you get home, you want to have a rant about your coach, but then your coach is also, like, your partner, and it's just not easy.
Yeah. And
it's not easy at all. So we're very separate with our work lives, and then we just hang out in the evening.
Yeah, okay.
But, like, what she does and what I do, two totally separate things.
So it's really weird for me because
bizarre.
my partner not only was a coach within the gym, she was an athlete, but then her job is she's a physiotherapist. So, like, we had so many similarities in our work lives as well. Yeah, in terms of, like, her treating people, but then aftercare is actually our domain because we get to see the athlete every single day.
Right, yeah.
And we get to monitor the rehab even though they're the ones prescribing it. So it's like, it was such a cool relationship to have and build together as well. So I don't know. I think I was lucky in that way, but...
oh, dude, I mean, if you can make that work, that's... like, that must be one of the best things to be able to do. But then the chances of having that work out are so slim that, like, early on, we just decided, like, we're setting a border, like, weightlifting is my thing, academics is your thing, and we're going to massively appreciate the thing that the other person's doing. And, like, we ask questions. Like, Charlotte knows everything that I'm doing with Weightlifting House. And I know, I can't say everything, but I know a lot about what she's doing with her PhD. I know what she's writing on, I know what she does today and tomorrow. And then in the evenings we hang out and we're close over our other mutual, enjoyments. But, like, with weightlifting, that's me. With her thing, that's her. And I think I think we're the kind of people where, like, we'll have the best time together. But then if we do too much of the same thing together, we'll get on each other's nerves or something like that. It's just, I don't know why, but it's just kind of how I am. It's how she is. And we like having our little separate, I can't really call them hobbies, but I'm so heavily invested in weightlifting that it's more of my life. But you know what I mean?
Yeah, I do.
Separate enjoyments. Yeah.
I get it. And I think, so to go back to your point on coaching your parents or whatever, like, I think, so my dad also trains at the gym and he just has zero interest in the sport of weightlifting. And he's probably more like Charlotte in the sense that, he appreciates what I do and what everyone else does with the gym. He's super supportive. He's the one that does the barbecues when we have competitions and things like that. But he's just, like, has no interest in actually doing the lifts.
Oh, no. I mean, my mum doesn't know what a snatch is or a clean and jerk. She has no idea what weightlifting is. And it's crazy. Like, I'm so heavily invested in it, but for her, it's like, well, as long as he's happy and, as long as you're enjoying it, then I'm all okay. But, she thinks I do bicep curls and leg press and all these sorts of things. She has no idea. I mean, my dad takes a bit more of an interest. He listens to the podcast. Well, actually, he takes a real interest. He listens to the podcast. He messages me about guests and stuff. But, I mean, no one in my family does any weightlifting. Yeah. No one in my family really knows what it feels like to set a PR or something like that, or to start mastering a movement like that. It's a really separate thing. But also, I don't know if you have this, but I just want to keep it like that. Like, I really like the fact that my dad will say, good episode, but I also wouldn't want my family to start trying out weightlifting. I just wouldn't be able to give them the time and the interest that they would want from it for some. I don't know why that is, but I just know that it wouldn't work out.
I think it's because of where in the sport you are and where in the sport your focus is. Totally agree. So for me, I have a lot of parents. So pretty much almost every single one of my lifters' parents train at the gym as well.
That's awesome.
So, like, and the only reason a couple of them don't is because they're either international or like in another state or, far away.
Damn.
But yeah, the gym is actually made up classically of like just a couple of different families,
Wow.
which is really weird. You know, we don't have many, like we're not a huge gym. We're actually very small. We only have about like 30
Yeah.
members or something.
Yeah.
And it's, so it's my family, Kush's family, who's my partner. She's no longer with us. Because she's in Canada at the moment. But her parents
Right.
still train here. You know, I don't know. You follow somewhat our Instagram, so you know some of the lifters.
Yeah.
You know, Shannon's family, who's, you know, around, and then Zafia and Jack's family. So
That's awesome.
it's really cool that we have that, you know, sort of family vibe. And, you know, some of those masters lifters are actually our bread and butter. They're the guys that are doing all the competitions and traveling interstate and things.
Oh, that's really nice. And that certainly does give you a good support structure in the gym.
Yes, it does.
Just everyone's kind of willing to help out with everything.
Yeah, and because they're invested. Like, you know, I obviously I'm invested in my parents' health because I want them to be around for as long as they can be. And I truly believe that weightlifting can be used as a recreational sport to prolong someone's life as well. It doesn't have to be the dark and gritty pursuit that is, you know, everything excellence.
Yeah. No, I got you. No, that sounds nice. I mean, I find it hard to sort of envisage what my gym will one day be like, but I'd never considered having that kind of family vibe. But it's nice because I see you guys training, and like everyone's training hard. I mean, occasionally you put up those funny videos of you just doing a ridiculous thing, like you did what was it with the battle ropes on the balance board the other day?
Yeah, so
like that was, I mean, hilarious. But like it seems like everyone trains crazy hard at that gym.
Yeah,
nice.
I mean, other than like, so those videos are just me, you know, doing silly things.
About, yeah.
But like people will often send me videos of people doing like impressive stuff, and I'm like, oh, I wonder if I can do that, and I'll film it and put it up. Though the other day, I actually, for the briefest amount of time, thought that snatching with chains was a good idea.
I saw that too. Yeah.
And quickly,
I've tried with bands before.
How did you go with that?
It was hard.
Yeah.
It was Glenn's doing. He wanted to try it out. He'd spent some time doing it with some of his like high level athletes at Cal Strength for a while. And we did it with the power clean. We just worked up as heavy as we could with the power clean and then took them off and then went for like max effort power cleans. And then we did it with the squats, and then he cracked it out with the snatches as well and got people power snatching with bands. And it's terrifying, dude.
Yes.
But it was cool. Yeah.
Because I can definitely see the benefit in bands, like, you know, building up, doing sets, and then going for a PR, because that is kind of like, you know, that PAP sort of thing. Like you're going to get some sort of post-activation potentiation from that. But yeah, my problem was like, so I did do some snatches with chains a few weeks ago just for fun, and I was doing like regular snatches, not power snatches. So the chains never truly left the ground, and it actually forced my bar path to be quite straight. Whereas the other day when I tried it, I was kind of like power snatching. So the chains would leave the ground and then wobble back and forth.
Yeah.
And that kind of didn't work. But maybe bands are a way of doing it. Like, I'm always looking for a novel way, something that's slightly, you know, I know people have done it before, but slightly innovative that's just going to push the envelope. If I can do something in a week that takes another person a month to do, that's kind of a win for me.
Right.
In some cases.
Yeah, I agree. I think people are far too quick to just say that something like that won't work. And the truth is they might be right, but they don't have a good enough rationale behind why it won't, and they don't have a good enough appreciation as to the benefits of doing something like that. Because you can look at a snatch with bands, and there are several things in that which you think, well, this is smart. Like, this will make sense. It's going to teach you to continually accelerate on the bar. because essentially, the weight feels like it's getting heavier as you go. You're going to have to get under faster. It does help to straighten out bar path to some extent. And then there might be other things where you go, well, this might not work and this might not work. And then you balance them out and you work out which one comes out on top. But when people say things like, this is obviously dumb, like there's no way that could work, it doesn't mimic a full lift. It's like, well, neither does a hang power clean. But we do them anyway. Like there are certain reasons we do these variations, and they're to accelerate the rate of improvement of a specific part of the lift that you're going for. And so you can look at bands and go, actually, there's some good thought in this. And I don't think anyone truly knows whether it is actually going to work or not. And most coaches decide that it's not. But with someone like Glenn, I like the fact that he thought, well, there are some pros to it and there are probably some cons. I'm just going to try it. We'll just try it for a while, see what happens. I mean, Glenn snatched 160 with bands when he was training.
Damn.
Like that. I mean, I don't know if that's maybe the heaviest weight anyone's ever snatched with bands, but I wouldn't be surprised. But I mean, he was fascinated by the idea and he gave it a go. And he said that he does actually like it. He thinks that it works. I mean, he made us do pulls with bands. I mean, 2 or 3 times a day, we'd work up to literally a max double. Like a max double clean pull with bands or snatch pull with bands, to the point where it's like, some of the guys at the top of their pull, it would be like 250, 260. And from the floor, it would be about 200. And just work up to a max double and then you're done. And it absolutely killed us. But I mean, a few days later, after we deloaded and took the bands off and hit some lighter lifts, everyone felt amazing. Like bands can work really well if you do them right.
I love that Glenn is not only open to trying something once, but open to trying something again and again just to rehash it. I can almost imagine a whole bunch of coaches have in the past tried bands and been like, oh, this definitely doesn't work. And then they've just been like, never tried them again. It's very cool to hear like that Glenn's tried them multiple times and is still trying to tinker.
Going. Yeah, he just keeps going with it just to see what he can do. And I think the good thing about him is he just doesn't care about looking stupid. Like, he doesn't care if he posts a video of him with some athletes trying to snatch with bands. It's like, yeah, I'm trying to find another way to make my athletes better than yours. And that's all he thinks about. He's the person I've met who solely thinks about weightlifting more than anyone else. Like, I've never met anyone like that. And I think to some extent that's why we clicked. Like, I'm not saying that I have anywhere near that depth of thought as Glenn, but like that was all I cared about, and it kind of still is, and it's all he cares about. And I think that is the reason we kind of got on so well and have spent so much time working together. It's just that singular focus. He calls it the something like the mindset of the samurai or something like that, but I think that's what it was. He's just so obsessed. Even now, he's still coming up with quirky little things that might make a difference. Oh.
I really would love to meet Glenn one day. I should try and sign up for one of those camps that you guys do.
Oh, dude. It'd be so much fun. I mean, you'd have to get the flights there, which would be tricky, but the camps themselves are cheap, and it's like 3 days or 2 or 3 sessions a day, and basically all the food you can ask for, somewhere to stay. Like, it's I mean, he underprices them crazily. He should put them up, but he doesn't. It would be a whole lot of fun. If you went out, I would make sure that I was there for whatever camp that was.
Cool.
It's a lot of fun.
You had, does Ed Maxwell still lift for Glenn?
I don't think so, because he made crazy progress with Glenn. His snatch went up to 140, I think, and he clean jerk like 170. And then he got really bad injuries. I can't remember what was injured, his elbow or his shoulder or something. And I think he's been, for about a year now, almost a year, he's been trying to fix himself. And I think it was a problem from before training with Glenn, because when he turned up, he was wonky. Like, one side of the bar would be higher than the other when he pulled it and when he caught it, and he would rotate a lot. And I think just the sudden rapid progress, maybe that he saw with Glenn, suddenly highlighted and exasperated this imbalance. But yeah, I think he's spent a little bit of time trying to fix that up.
Yeah, okay.
I'm not sure how he's doing now, but he was doing really well. Yeah.
Yeah, because when I first met...
tempted to look him up.
Like, I first met Ed when I first started weightlifting, and he was a young kid. And then I remember hearing about him on the podcast. And I was like, is that the same Ed I know?
Yeah, that's him. I'm just on his Instagram now just to see. The last thing he posted was in February. It was an old video of him snatching 136. So yeah, he's been out for a little while. He said that he said that he had golfer's elbow and patellar tendonitis in the knee. So apparently he's squatting again now, but cool. I don't know if he's lifting anything proper, but he's got a lot of potential. He's a strong guy.
And he's young too.
Yeah, he is, isn't he? He's still really young.
Yeah.
Yeah, he can go someplace. Yeah.
All right, dude. I think that's probably a good place to leave off. I don't want to take up any more of your time.
No, absolutely. I appreciate it. This is really fun. I always love coming on. It's always a good time to not be the person who has to come up with a conversation. So it's nice I got to put that burden on you today, and I just got to enjoy answering some really interesting questions. I was thrown at the start because on the other episodes that we've done together, you would do you'd spend a few minutes doing an introduction, and then on this one, halfway through, I was like, yeah, I think the podcast has started now. I think we're definitely going. Like, I wasn't completely sure or not. Yeah, man, a whole load of fun. So thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, so with the start, I sometimes, especially because the conversation's already flowing, I don't want to interrupt the flow by doing that. So I'll just add that in post.
Oh, I got you. Yeah, I actually think that's a really good way to start podcasts, is just to roll the conversation that you have and then just decide to start it when you want to. Yes. When you're doing the editing.
Yeah, I think that's the best way too. Anyway, where can people find you?
Weightliftinghouse.com, Weightliftinghouse on Instagram, and Seb Ostrowicz everywhere else. That's with a WICZ. I think that's everything. Yeah, I mean, if you type in Weightlifting House, you'll find out everything you need to know.
Oh, sorry, I forgot to ask, how are your knees doing?
Better.
Yeah, so you're back to lifting now?
Yeah, so I spent a lot of time not lifting, thinking that I would help my tendonitis. I then had some of the guys from Barbell Medicine on, and we spoke about tendonitis, and it turned out that actually your tendons don't respond to time off, they respond to load.
Yeah.
So I started doing loaded work, so really slow eccentric squats, pistols, all of these sorts of things, and my knees are in better and better shape every single week, which is good. Like, I still don't feel like I have the healthiest knees in the world, but I'm at a point where I can do some training, which is, I mean, you know what it's like. For your mindset, it's just everything if you can go to the gym and train hard. So
yes,
I'm very pleased with that.
Awesome, man.
Yeah.
All right. Guys, you can find RAW Barbell Club at RAW Barbell Club on all of our social media. So that's Instagram, YouTube, Facebook, all the in between. Make sure you follow us on Instagram. Check out all our stories. Make sure you follow us on YouTube. Subscribe if you like this podcast and like all the others. Please give us a 5-star rating. And lastly, if you want to support the podcast, you now can. First off, you can share it with your friends. That helps us a lot. And secondly, you can actually donate to the podcast. So making this podcast is a lot of fun, but it does require a little bit of time, money, and effort. And right now, you guys can actually help us. So all you have to do is go to www.rawbarbellclub.com/donate, and you can donate any amount you see fit. But all we ask is the price of a coffee or a tea in Seb's case.
Definitely a tea.
Thank you guys so much for listening, and I will see you next time.
Cheers, guys.
Supersonic.